Next up is Linda Martin. Linda Martin, MME, MTBC, has been working with children of disabilities in a variety of capacities since 1997, including as a board-certified neurologic music therapist in the Schools and Autism Program Coordinator and Behavioral Specialist at Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego, California. After starting the Miracle 139 Special Needs Ministry at the Rock Church in San Diego in 2007, Linda developed a passion to see all churches become a welcoming place for all children. Linda is a published author, speaker, and founder of Miracle 139 International, a nonprofit organization that provides training in schools and churches around the world, impacting the lives of thousands of children with disabilities. And today she's going to talk to us about a quick look into international disability ministry. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about something I'm very passionate about. But we've been sitting for a little while, so if you can just reach up and stretch. It's almost lunchtime, and I promise to get you out of here as quickly as possible. Shake it out, and we'll get started. So, like she said, my name is Linda Martin, and I have the privilege of founding and leading Miracle 139 International. And along with some training that we do in the States, we have a focus on international training, both in schools and in churches. But I'm going to focus on what's happening in the disability ministry space internationally. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of statistics on how many churches are equipped to welcome families impacted by disability around the world. I wish there were more stats on that. Hopefully soon we'll have some. I was talking to a few people last night about that, but what we do know is that there are 1.3 billion people internationally impacted with a significant disability. We know that 80% of people living with disabilities live in developing countries, and that they're in developing countries. If you've ever been to one, you know there are lots of barriers, limited access to resources, and churches there. And then 20% of people living in extreme poverty have a disability. So again, there's a people group that really needs support, but has very limited access to that. So we know that there's a need. This slide is to say there is a big need for support around the world. One of the first things that we start with when we are traveling internationally, when we're doing training internationally, is to understand the people. We want to understand their culture. We want to hear their stories, know their history, learn their traditions. It's so beautiful to get to know people in different areas, get to know their language, what they value. And with that, what we see is that there's so many differences in different parts of the world. So for example, we're beginning a relationship with a potential project in Vietnam, and what we're hearing in terms of, the stigma, the karma that a lot of people put on disability there. If you have someone with disabilities, it's because there's bad karma, or someone in your ancestral line did something that means now you have a child with disabilities, which we know obviously is not the truth. But when you have been fed that, when that's what your culture believes for so long, it's really hard to kind of un-ingrain some of those deep-seated misbeliefs. In China, for example, we were able to get in the door, God is amazing, to do some training both in some universities there, at a public school, and then in the orphanage. It actually is a Christian-run orphanage there, working with the state, which is a miracle. But what is happening there is, there used to be all these child limit laws, so the government was regulating how many children a family could have. So if a parent found out they were going to have a baby impacted by disabilities, kids are aborted at extreme rates there. And then if a child is born with disabilities, they're almost always abandoned. And the stories that we heard about, being left in trash cans, and, this orphanage would get kids coming to them from just the most horrific stories of kids being left. But again, there's so many parts about the culture that if you don't understand where they're coming from, how can you lend a hand to help? We've done a lot of work in South America, and there's a lot of sin stigma there. So a feeling of okay, if you have a child with disabilities, obviously somebody in your family did something sinful for that to happen. And again, because these things are so deep rooted, it takes a lot of conversation to kind of work through some of those things, to better understand that God's word says differently and we believe differently. This child is beautifully and wonderfully made by God. So, but it takes the conversation and it takes understanding where they're coming from. The other thing that we see a lot in South America, but is really the case in most developing countries, is the limited accessibility, and that is impacting people with disabilities' ability to reach a church or reach support areas. So that's something else that we talk about a lot. So when we get to know the culture, we also have to understand specific barriers where they're at. So one of the things that I kind of didn't even stop to think about until we were having this conversation with a friend in Vietnam was that, we're talking about how can we equip your children's ministry to be able to be more inclusive. And the reality is, unless you're in big cities or at a big church, a lot of them don't even have children's ministries. And that kind of blew my mind because even small churches here, we start off with children's ministry almost from the jump. But in a lot of rural places, that isn't even the case. And when we're talking about inclusion in the church, it's not going to take the same path. It's not going to look the same as what we may see or experience here. And then, like I said, the cultural stigma is understanding what that is so that we can build that in as we're having those conversations about disability and theology and what God really believes about our children. And then accessibility. How do we be honest about these barriers that are inhibiting people to get to a church community? So we need to look at are there sidewalks? Are there paved roads where people can come? Are there transportation options that are accessible so that they can get there? And I was speaking with someone today and really sharing their experience also of if we want to reach people, sometimes we have to go to them because in reality, there may not be options for them to come to us. The other thing that we don't always stop to think about, unless this has been your personal experience, is the limitations on even being able to get inside the building, being able to leave and know that you're going to have a bathroom where you're going. I mean, imagine if, you're every day used to the buildings, the places that you go not having accessible bathrooms, and then realizing if I leave the house, I may not, by the time I have to get to where I'm going and go through whatever I'm doing there and then come back, I may be 4 or 5 or more hours without being able to use a bathroom. So a lot of these barriers, we need to talk through them. We need to put this on the table so that we can, again, find solutions and come up with great next steps. So again, the first place that we always start is that conversation. What is your reality? What is your vision for what you would like your church to be in terms of inclusivity or your community to be? What is your truth? What are you experiencing? And really hearing what they have to say. And from there, then thinking through, okay, Lord, how can we help? And I think one of the best things we can do, and Minsu mentioned this, I thought it was great, is sharing our stories of inspiration. So when people can hear the truth about, what you experience as, let's say you're a parent of a child with disabilities, when you can share your testimony of, this is how I felt in the moment, and this is how God revealed the truth to me about the value of my child, being able to share that gives hope to another family. We were in Paraguay and maybe it was Peru, I can't remember. And we had a mother and her adult son with autism that were on a trip with us. And we were doing a, kind of one-day workshop for the community. And the mom, her name is Sandy, offered a talk on hope as a parent. And after the talk, I will never forget, this mom came up to her, had a son on the spectrum, and just wept and said, I see my son through a whole different light now. And just that story of hope, that story of her navigating what it meant to be a mom of two sons with autism, what that meant for her, and the hope that she has in Christ for a future for her boys, for happiness within her family, really changed this mom. And again, she was just in tears. And to know that that son is going to grow up now, that boy with autism is going to grow up with a mom who values him and sees him not as a burden, but as this beautiful gift from God is just priceless. And then one of the things that we really value as an organization is to equip leaders. So we want our trainings to be sustainable. We want to equip and empower locals to be the experts in disability inclusion. So we're always looking at how can we find and train leaders who can then mentor other church leaders, other people in their community. So really looking at the mentorship model and how do we kind of pay it forward, if you will. And I want to just end with one story of hope that I'm so blessed by. And a shout out to our friends in Peru who I think are watching virtually right now. I'm sharing their story because it's so touching for me, what they're doing there. So there's some friends that have been doing disability ministry there in multiple capacities for a while. They're at a large multi-site church in Lima, Peru. And, after years of just demonstrating what good disability inclusion looks like, and, they have both buddies and they have a specialized classroom for kids with more significant needs, and they've been talking with leadership for a while about the importance of the church embracing inclusion as a whole. And just recently, in the past few months, the church said, okay, we're going to have our first Disability Awareness Sunday. So they came up with a great presentation and some testimonial videos to show to their church. And the leadership came to them and said, we are all on board. We want our church as a whole to have a culture of disability inclusion. This is in Lima, Peru. I love it so much. They have committed to changing over all their restrooms to be disability accessible, wheelchair accessible, ADA compliant, all the physical changes, which is not easy where they're at to make all their churches accessible. And the other thing that is so cool is that they have committed to training all of their children's ministry volunteers. There's about 400 of them on disability inclusion. So they are taking them all through a training. They're inviting them then to they're going to do some online training with us and then some in-person training to reinforce those concepts. But isn't that amazing? All of their children's ministry volunteers are going to know and understand the importance of inclusion, and all of their different ministries within the church are going to understand that inclusion is all of our opportunity. It is all of our opportunity to do this together, to know how to be inclusive and welcoming together. So I love it. I'm so encouraged by what they're doing. My name is Linda Martin, Miracle 139 International. We do have Instagram and Facebook. Please follow us. If your church or your ministry teams ever want to do some international work together, let me know. I would love it. We have a booth out there if you want to talk more. Thank you so much, and enjoy your lunch.